I am so firmly in my procrastination era. Tell me why I'm only filming this video on Wednesday, like 4 days after Crown Chasers has come out. That doesn't mean, however, that I was any less excited about this episode. I've just been going through it, okay? If you're a woman, you know what I'm talking about. This episode, again, was just full of information that have cemented some of these women as my favorites. The theme of this episode was honoring your heritage. I'm, of course, talking about episode 4 of Miss South Africa's Crown Chasers. And the first challenge, sort of, that the girls had to partake in is training with the South African women's football team, and they placed specific emphasis on Homba at first, and that's exactly what I was thinking, because Homba, of course, is the sport girly of the bunch. She is a sports scientist, and I thought that this challenge was just so cut out for Homba, and the winner of the challenge actually got, a little bit of a advantage. And this woman was able to choose who spoke first for the speaking challenge that came later in the episode. But the winner turned out not to be Homba, but Anke, which that in itself is not surprising either. Anke is the one with the abs, after all.
This is Homba Mazaleni signing off from Anke Rothmann's abs.
Now, as with every episode of Crown Chasers, the girls had a photo shoot as well, which was also based on the theme of the episode. And the girls were dressed in these beautiful Nkosi outfits with matching backdrops. I absolutely loved this shoot. The very talented Katlego Mokupiane was the photographer. And I really liked that they showed the girls introducing themselves to the photographer. I think when you're heading into a new industry, or you're trying to establish yourself in a specific industry, it's very important to, be open, introduce yourself, let people know your name. That's very, very important in my opinion, and I love that they showed the girls introducing themselves. And I want everyone to know that you should always feel open to introducing yourself, letting people know your name. My favorites from the heritage photo shoots in the Nkosi outfits turned out to be Homba, Nande, and Natasha. I thought these 3 girls absolutely slayed the shoot. The third challenge was a literal cooking show. Now, if you know the pageant industry, then you know that reference, because everything nowadays, if the people don't get their way, is a cooking show. But challenge number 3 for Miss SA Crown Chasers episode 4 was a literal cooking show, and they talked about it being a braai, but it wasn't really. There was fire and braai-ish elements involved, but basically every single girl got to make her own dish, based on her heritage, which, oh my goodness, I love. There is so much culture in food, especially in South Africa. There are girls from all over the place in the Miss SA top 10 or 9 as it were this year, and I was just so pleased to see all of the girls cooking their lovely meals. I must say, I got so hungry watching this. Oh my goodness, because one thing about South African women, we can cook, and these women were cooking, or as Bryoni herself said,
they can damn cook.
Now, as I've mentioned before, there was a speaking challenge, and this is the heritage speech. The topic was My Heritage, My Hope, in which the girls basically had to talk about their own past and also adding some hope element to it. So talking about their past, but also talking about what perhaps they have learned and aiming at the future. You know what I mean? It was basically like an inspirational talk, but you also had to include some elements of your past or some lesson from your past. Now, actress Leandi Durant was judging this. Anke was first up. She actually chose herself to be first, and I actually loved her speech. It was heartwarming, it was heart-wrenching at the same time. I could definitely relate to it, and you can definitely tell that she has experienced real hardship. Anke's speech was just really, really inspiring. She talked about having to move around a lot, which I can relate to. I think I was in something like 14 schools, 13 schools, having to move all the time because my parents just couldn't afford school fees a lot of the time. Oh, it's so embarrassing to say, but it's true. And so for that reason, I really related to Anke a lot. And oh, you guys told me that was going to happen. You guys told me that I was going to fall for Anke, and here I am. I have fallen for Anke. I hope you're happy. Ané came with this story about being too tall and people bullying her for being too tall. And I'm sorry, it just didn't match up, with Anke's story in terms of, the pulling at heartstrings, because I'm 5'2", okay? I'm like 158 at most centimeters. I can't relate to someone being bullied for being tall. And so for that reason, I just didn't relate to Ané the way that I did to Anke. Jordan also talked about being bullied at school, which also was a bit, it touched her heart a little bit, I must admit. Nande, she talked about having a strong family foundation. That's basically what it came down to. I really did appreciate Nande's speech. For Natasha, you can really tell that her Miss Universe non-placement really left an, indelible mark on her. Of course, she talks about her father dying a couple of years ago as well, before her competing at Miss South Africa and all of that, and that had to grow her up. But I think her non-placement at Miss Universe, after having to, step into Zozi's shoes, it definitely grew her up even more into the woman she is now, which is, a much more confident, but at the same time a bit more humble than she used to be, actually, if that makes sense. Bryoni talked about experiencing colorism, which is definitely not uncommon in the Indian and other Asian communities. Keaoleboga talked about her time in China and the importance of representation and finding her purpose there. Melissa talked about her regrets of denouncing her Ugandan heritage at first, and her father being the Ugandan side, she denounced him. And this, of course, is where her very strong advocacy against xenophobia comes from, which I think is very important to know, and is something that I didn't know about her. The fact that she at first denounced her Ugandan heritage in order to try and avoid xenophobia in South Africa. As for Homba, I absolutely loved her speech, but I think that her final quote speaks for itself.
Don't let the society that we've built mold you. Become the mold.
For the runway challenge, of course, again, we had Bonang, Liandi, and Nkosi herself judging. And for the runway, as per usual, Natasha did the absolute best. She slayed runway, and I must say, for runway, Melissa and Bryoni for me were very close seconds. They weren't near what Natasha was, but for me they were tied seconds, you know what I mean? Now in the top three was Homba, Natasha and Anke, which I definitely agree with. Anke actually is a bit surprising because last week in episode 3, Anke was actually in the bottom 3. In this episode, the top 3 were, Homba, Anke and Natasha, and at the end of the day, Homba was actually the one that got best speech. The people loved her speech the most, which I definitely concur. She gave a great speech, but I would definitely also say that Anke's speech was also top notch. But I think all three of them were pretty much tied when it came to favorite speech, but Homba actually won the overall challenge for episode 4. So she is the official episode 4 winner, but for me, I think it was like, it's so close. It's insane between these 3 women this episode. Now, Anke, what I really liked about Anke, again, guys, with my crush on Anke, after I literally did not like her in the beginning, like, who is this person? Who am I? Am I someone who can change my opinion? Wow. So Anke did something amazing. She talked about how after being in the bottom in episode 3, she went to everybody and asked, listen, what can I do better? And I'm just like, yes, this is what we need. Someone who can accept that she is not perfect and seek out ways to be better. I love to see it. Now, when it comes to the bottom 3, We have Jordan, Kia, and Ané. Okay, so we have to start with Jordan because Jordan has been the biggest disappointment for me. When I saw that she was entering again, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I love Jordan. I'm so glad Jordan's back. But Jordan has been lacking so much, and it's so disappointing. And she even admits herself, episode after episode, she always goes on and on about, oh, I know I could have done better, this isn't my strength. She says this every episode. She talks about how she could have done better instead of just applying herself and doing better the way that Anke did this episode. I'm so disappointed in Jordan, to be honest with you. Keaoleboga, on the other hand, the arrogance on Keaoleboga this episode, when she was called into the bottom 3, she was called in last week also, when she was called in again, she acted like she couldn't have been more perfect this episode, which I beg to differ.
Flabbergasted. What? Again? What is it that you guys want from me now? Like, honestly, what do you want? I know how I did, and I did not think that I would end up in bottom 3.
If you're in the bottom 3, like I've said before, these judges have been very accurate thus far. There haven't been many people to disagree with their judgments, and me neither. I have found little to no fault in the way that these judges have been judging. So Kia must just accept the fact that she is not the strongest one this year, to be honest with you. Kia used to bring something to the table last year, which were her rhetoric skills. She isn't that girl this year. That girl this year, I'm sorry, is Homba. Homba has taken Kia's place as the speaking queen. There are girls who bring such strong things to the table, like Natasha with her runway and her style, Homba with her speaking. Homba has been such a chameleon, changing herself, updating. Anke just improving herself episode after episode. These newbie girls are trampling Kia, and she can't accept that. Kia doesn't bring anything special to the table this year, and I think that really hurts, and maybe that's difficult for her to understand, but that's just something that she's going to have to accept and work on, instead of having an attitude when she inevitably ends up in the bottom 3. I don't like Kia's attitude this year, to be honest with you. Then we have Ané. Ané also was a bit arrogant in the beginning, you know, talking about how she feel like she could have, she did her best and what have you. Anyway, Ané was the one who ended up getting eliminated, which I was not that surprised by. I did like Ané for the fact that she was very authentic. I did like Ané's authenticity. There was something real about her, which I love to see, but unfortunately she just isn't refined enough to be Miss South Africa yet. As usual, by the end of filming this, my foot is dead once again, so let me end it. As you guys know, we can still vote our faves back into the top. Miss South Africa has announced their tickets are on sale, so you guys can go buy tickets and all of that. I think I'm gonna go next year, to be honest with you. But I think we're going to have a top 8, because at the end of it all, after this Sunday's episode, there are going to be 7 girls left, and then I think they're going to choose the one with the most votes that was eliminated and put her back in, so that we have a top 8 on stage. So I'm looking forward to seeing who that will be. Tell me who you guys are voting back in. I think it might be Lungo, but I'm not sure. So let me know who you guys will be voting for. Who do you think is going home next? I think it might be Kia, to be honest with you, because at this moment I feel like she is the weakest link of the bunch. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys are enjoying Crown Chasers as much as I am, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.